In the beginning there was no fire, and there was no sun. The world was unformed and gray. It was a land of ancient stone and endless fog. Immense trees, called arch trees, stretched to the heavens, and beneath them the land was ruled by everlasting dragons. These beings were timeless and unyielding, with stone scales that could not be pierced and eyes that saw without fear. The world seemed eternal and changeless. But then fire appeared. No one can say how it came to be, but its arrival altered everything. Fire brought disparity into the gray world. From the flame came heat and cold. From it came life and death, and with the flame also came light and dark. It was this first flame that gave the lords their power. Within the fire, great souls were found. Gwyn took one, a soul of light and immense power. The witch of Izalith took another, a soul of flame that she wielded with mastery. Nito, the first of the dead, claimed a soul steeped in death and decay. And a being called the furtive pygmy found a soul of a very different kind, the dark soul, a fragment that he kept hidden. With these powers, the lords rose against the dragons. Gwyn struck them down with spears of lightning that shattered their scales. The witch and her daughters conjured great storms of fire. Nito spread miasma and death. And Seath, the Scaleless, a dragon who betrayed his own kind, revealed to the lords the secrets needed to claim victory. Together, they brought an end to the Age of Ancients. The dragons were destroyed, and the rule of fire began. Gwyn built his shining city of Anorlando, a place of sunlight and majesty. The witch of Izalith created the flame arts of pyromancy. Nito descended into the tombs and became lord of the dead. Humanity spread across the land, carrying with them the seed of the dark soul. Yet fire is not eternal. The first flame began to wane, and with it the age of fire began to fade. Darkness threatened to rise. The gods feared this end. In desperation, Gwyn chose to sacrifice himself. He marched to the kiln of the first flame and offered his very soul to rekindle the dying light. His sacrifice kept the flame alive, but it chained the world into a cycle that demanded more sacrifice. As the flame weakened, the curse of the undead spread through humanity. Those branded with the dark sign could never truly die. When slain, they would rise again at the nearest bonfire, drawn back by the fragment of fire still flickering in the world. But each rebirth eroded their mind and their will. In time, they would hollow, becoming little more than walking corpses. The story now turns to one such undead. The Chosen One began imprisoned in the Undead Asylum, a place where those cursed were locked away, abandoned to rot until their sanity faded. The asylum was cold and silent, filled with the cries of the hollow who had long since lost themselves. In that bleak cell, a corpse was thrown down from above, carrying with it a key. This small act of mercy came from a knight of Astora, who had seen in this undead the spark of destiny. With the key, the undead broke free of their chains. The asylum was no safe place. Hollow guards wandered its halls, some mindless, some still clinging to the memory of battle. towering above them all was the undead demon, a grotesque beast of fat wings and crushing strength. Its hammer could pulverize stone and bone alike, but the chosen fought bravely, striking again and again until the creature fell. Beyond the asylum walls, a giant crow appeared. It seized the undead in its talons and bore them across the skies to the land of ancient lords. And so the journey began in Lordran. The first sight was Firelink Shrine, a crumbling ruin upon a cliff where a single bonfire burned weakly. A handful of souls gathered there, each cursed, each waiting. Some clung to hope, others drifted toward despair. A weary knight spoke of a prophecy. It was said that one day an undead would rise, ring the bells of awakening, and discover their fate. Perhaps the one who now sat at the fire was that chosen undead. The path forward led toward the undead burg, a city fallen into ruin. Its streets were crowded with hollow soldiers who had once been proud knights and townsfolk. Now they stumbled aimlessly or attacked with a madness that could not be reasoned with. The towers echoed with the roar of a Taurus demon, a hulking beast that waited upon the battlements. The chosen fought it on the narrow wall above the abyss, striking while avoiding its crushing blows until the demon toppled and was slain. Deeper still was the undead parish, where the bell tower stood. Gargoyles of stone perched upon the rooftop. When the chosen ascended, the gargoyles came to life. They were massive beasts of wings and fire, their tails lashing as they breathed flames across the roof. Yet the chosen endured, shattering stone and wing, and rang the first bell of awakening. Its toll carried across Lordran like thunder. The second bell was hidden far below, beneath the depths of Blighttown, a festering swamp of poison and filth. The chosen braved the sewers where basilisks lurked with eyes that cursed the living. They crossed rotting scaffolds and ladders, fighting through plague and madness until they reached the lair of chaos itself. There they faced Quelaag, a daughter of Izalith, twisted into a spider demon by her mother's failed flame. Her body was half woman, half beast, her eyes burning with rage. The battle was fierce, fire against steel. But when she fell, the chosen rang the second bell. The sound echoed through the mountains. Gates of stone trembled, and the path to Sen's fortress was opened. The fortress was a cruel place. Serpent soldiers guarded its halls, half man and half snake. Blades swung endlessly in narrow corridors. Boulder traps rolled through channels, crushing anything in their path. Lightning demons lurked on high walkways, their spears sparking with death. The chosen pressed on with patience and courage, climbing ever higher until they faced the iron golem. The massive figure towered over the battlements, a guardian forged of steel. It fought with mighty swings that shook the fortress itself. But the chosen struck at its legs, staggering the giant until it fell from the wall and shattered below. Victory here brought no time for rest. From the skies descended the winged beings of Anorlando, massive creatures who seized the undead in their talons and bore them aloft. The fortress dwindled behind, the world opened below, and before them appeared the shining city of the gods. Anorlando awaited.
Anorlando rose before the chosen like a dream. Its spires gleamed gold beneath a sun that seemed eternal. Its staircases curved gracefully toward vast cathedrals. Bridges stretched across the air, suspended over endless drops. At first sight, it appeared untouched by decay, preserved in glory. But silence filled its streets, and emptiness haunted its halls. The gods who had once walked here had long since departed. Knights of silver still patrolled the city. They fought with honor, their spears and shields polished bright, their discipline unbroken. Great sentinels of stone guarded the cathedral doors. They were enormous figures, each swing of their hammer enough to shake the earth. The chosen cut a path through them, step by step, until they reached the grand hall within. There waited two champions whose names were spoken with reverence and dread. Ornstein, Dragon Slayer, captain of the 4 Knights of Gwyn, clad in golden armor, his spear crackling with lightning. Smo, the executioner, massive and cruel, his hammer a grotesque weapon built to pulverize. They fought as one, Ornstein darting swiftly across the chamber, Smo crushing all in his path. When one of them fell, the other consumed his power, growing stronger and more relentless. The battle was long and merciless, but at last both champions lay defeated. The cathedral grew quiet, and then light poured into the hall. Upon the altar appeared Guinevere, daughter of Gwyn, the princess of sunlight. Her voice was gentle, and her presence radiant. She spoke with warmth, praising the chosen and granting them the Lord vessel. This sacred chalice would allow travel across the fires of the land and would open the sealed door to the kiln of the first flame. Yet before that path could be taken, the chosen was tasked to fill the Lord vessel with the great souls of those who had once been lords. And so began a new journey. The first soul awaited deep beneath the catacombs, a maze of tunnels filled with skeletons that reformed even after death. Necromancers raised them again and again, filling the dark with the clatter of bones. The chosen descended past these halls into the tomb of the giants, a cavern of absolute blackness. There no torch could cut the dark, no light could hold against the void. Only a faint lantern allowed the chosen to glimpse the monstrous skeletons that loomed in the shadows, giants whose swords crashed like falling trees. At the very bottom waited Nito, the first of the dead. He was a mass of bones and shadows, a living grave surrounded by legions of skeletons. His presence drained the strength of the living. His attacks carried the chill of death itself. Yet the chosen endured, breaking through his horde and striking at the grave lord until he collapsed. The great soul of death was claimed. Another soul lay to the south, in the ruins of Izalith. Long ago, the Witch of Izalith had tried to create a new flame when the first flame began to fade. Her attempt failed, and instead birthed the flame of chaos, a corruption that twisted her and her daughters into demons. From this flame poured forth monsters that overran her city. The chosen ventured into these ruins, fighting Taurus demons upon bridges and Capra demons within halls. At the gate stood Ceaseless Discharge, a molten giant, his body aflame, his rage endless. One by one, these creatures fell until the chosen reached the heart of the ruins. There dwelt the Bed of Chaos, a monstrous tree of fire and roots. Its limbs swung like scythes, tearing the earth apart. Floors crumbled beneath the chosen's feet. Within its core, the Witch of Izalith writhed, consumed by her own creation. The chosen pressed on through collapsing ground and sweeping branches, striking at the heart of the creature until it fell. The flame of chaos guttered out, and the soul of the witch was claimed. The third soul was guarded by Seath the Scaleless. Once he had betrayed his own kin, the eternal dragons, and had been rewarded with a dukedom and the endless halls of the Duke's archives. But his envy of his brothers, who bore scales of stone, never left him. Obsessed with immortality, he turned to cruel experiments, twisting maidens into crystal creatures, creating abominations in pursuit of forbidden knowledge. He entered his archives, passing through labyrinths of towering bookshelves and shifting staircases. Crystal warriors and chanting channelers filled the halls. At last, he faced Seath himself, a pale, twisted dragon surrounded by gleaming crystal. But he could not be harmed. His body was protected by the primordial crystal, the true source of his immortality. The Chosen was defeated and imprisoned deep beneath the archives, alongside the broken victims of Seath's madness. Yet even here, escape was found. Fighting free of the prison, the Chosen returned, determined to end the dragon. Through glittering taverns of crystal, across fragile, glowing bridges that seemed ready to collapse into darkness, the Chosen found the crystal and shattered it. Seath howled as his immortality was stripped away. The battle was fierce, crystal breath and thrashing wings filling the cavern, but the Chosen endured. Seath fell, and his soul was taken. The final soul awaited beneath New Londo, a once thriving city that had been drowned to contain a terrible curse. The four kings, its rulers, had fallen to darkness, and the guardians of the city had opened the floodgates to bury it in water, sacrificing the people to contain the abyss. The Chosen descended into its ruins, moving through broken homes and drowned halls where vengeful ghosts lingered. These spirits could not be harmed by ordinary steel. Their touch carried the chill of sorrow, and only cursed weapons could strike them down. At the bottom of the city lay the abyss, a void without light, endless and suffocating. To enter it, the Chosen bore the ring of Artorius, a knight who had once braved this darkness and perished resisting its pull. Within the abyss, the four kings attacked. They were spectral shades clad in armor, drifting through the void, their blades striking from the dark. One by one they multiplied until the Chosen fought several at once. It was a battle of endurance, fought in complete blackness, but at last the kings fell, and their fragmented soul was taken. The Lord vessel now brimmed with power. The great souls were gathered, the barriers broken. The way to the kiln of the first flame was open.
With the Lord vessel filled, the Chosen returned to Firelink Shrine. It was a place of faint safety, yet also of sorrow. Those who gathered there told their own stories, each cursed, each broken in their own way. A warrior of Kateria laughed heartily, but always seemed to find himself trapped in hopeless situations. A knight of Astora had spoken gently, but revealed his despair when he murdered the guardian of the fire before vanishing into the wilds. A proud sorcerer boasted of his knowledge, but his arrogance consumed him and led him to madness. Even the knight who had sought his own son burned so brightly that his light threatened to destroy him. Firelink Shrine was a mirror of the curse. Some clung to hope, some drifted into ruin, all stood on the brink of hollowing. The Chosen saw their faces, heard their stories, and knew that each was caught in the same cycle. Yet still the Chosen pressed forward. It was here that the primordial serpent Frampt emerged from the abyss below, his massive head rising like a wall of scales and teeth. His booming voice spoke of destiny. The Chosen was to succeed Gwyn, to link the fire, to keep the Age of Fire alive. Whether his words were truth or manipulation, no one could say. but he guided the Chosen toward the final path. The barriers that had sealed the way to the kiln of the first flame dissolved. The doors of fate opened. The Chosen walked forward through a land where ash covered the ground like snow. The air was heavy and still, as though time itself had halted. Great trees stood in silence, their branches burned and brittle. The ground glowed faintly as if fire still smoldered beneath the earth. Along the path stood the Black Knights, once the proud warriors of Gwyn. They had followed their lord into the flame itself and were burned forever by its fire. Their armor had turned black, their forms twisted, yet they fought with unwavering loyalty even after death. Each clash against them was heavy with sorrow, for these knights were not enemies, but victims of the same sacrifice that now awaited the Chosen. The kiln itself was a vast wasteland of white ash stretching endlessly beneath a sky without sun. The silence here was suffocating. Each step echoed as though the world itself were hollow. At the center of this ashen desert, the Chosen found him. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight. He was once the mightiest of the gods, the bearer of the greatest soul, the king who had led his people against the dragons and built the shining city of Anorlando. But now he was only a shadow. His armor was tarnished, his beard scorched, his eyes burned away. His sword was still alight, but trembled in his withered hand. He had given everything to the fire, and in return, the fire had hollowed him. The battle that followed was not one of glory, but of tragedy. Gwyn fought with relentless fury, his blade striking fast and hard. His every attack carried desperation, as though he sought not to win, but to cling to the fire that had already consumed him. The music that filled the kiln was not the roar of battle, but the lonely notes of a piano, gentle and sorrowful, telling the story of a god who had lost everything. The Chosen fought with patience, striking when the openings came, enduring the fury of a fallen lord, and at last, Gwyn fell upon the ashes that had once been his throne. The flame flickered before the Chosen. It was small now, weak and fading, but still alive. The heat was faint, the light dim, yet it still burned. This was the moment of truth. The Chosen could turn away and let the fire die, allowing the age of dark to begin, an age of humanity uncertain and unknown. Or they could step forward into the flame, embrace it, and prolong the age of fire once more. In this path, the Chosen stepped forward.
The Chosen walked into the fire. The first flame rose around them, its light swallowing their body, its heat consuming their flesh. In that moment, there was no pain and no fear, only the knowledge that they had become fuel for a fire greater than themselves. The flames surged, and the kiln was filled with light once more. The sacrifice of Gwyn was repeated. A new Lord of Cinder was born. The age of fire continued. Yet this act was not an ending. It was another link in a chain. The first flame had been preserved, but it would fade again. And when it did, another would be called. Another undead branded with the dark sign. Another destined to rise, to gather souls, to choose whether to link the fire or let it die. The world had been bound to this endless cycle from the moment Gwyn cast himself into the flame. The Chosen had become part of that cycle.
The story of Dark Souls is one of fire and dark, of cycles without end, of choice that is not truly freedom. It is the story of gods who feared the end of their age and clung to the fire, and of humans who carry within them the seed of darkness. It is the story of a curse that cannot be lifted, only delayed, and of heroes who rise not to break the cycle, but to continue it. The journey of the chosen undead was marked by trials that tested courage, patience, and will. They faced demons born of chaos, kings corrupted by the abyss, dragons twisted by envy, and knights loyal even in death. Each step was burdened with the weight of countless sacrifices. Each victory carried the echo of loss. And yet, through all of it, they endured. They stood where so many had fallen. They chose where so many had faltered. In linking the fire, the chosen became something both more and less than human. They became a vessel of sacrifice, a fleeting spark keeping the age of fire alive for a little longer. The gods would not return, their thrones remained empty, their power scattered. But the fire still burned, and the world still turned beneath its light. The hollow at the asylum cell, the nameless undead who began with nothing but a broken body and a faint hope, had risen to stand among legends. They had inherited the legacy of Gwyn, the witch of Izalith, Nito, and Seath. They had faced the betrayal of Seath, the madness of the bed of chaos, the sorrow of Nito, the fury of the four kings, and the loneliness of Gwyn. And in the end, they had chosen to give themselves fully to the fire. This path is not one of triumph, it is one of tragedy. For though the world shines a little longer, though the sun continues to rise over Anorlando, and the bells toll across the mountains, and the bonfires still flicker in the dark, it is all borrowed time. The flame will fade again. Another undead will rise again, and the question will return again. Link the fire, or let it die. Some call this fate cruel. Others see it as inevitable. But within it lies a strange kind of beauty. For every chosen undead, every soul who rises and struggles and falls, leaves behind a story. And those stories endure, even as the fire wanes. The tale of the chosen undead is one of burden and sacrifice, but it is also one of perseverance. In a world of despair, they found purpose. In a world of endless death, they chose to stand. And in a world where all things fade, they chose to burn brightly, even if only for a moment. As the first flame roared once more, the kiln shone with blinding brilliance. The ash that had buried the land was consumed, the silence was broken, and the world was given another age of fire. The sun would rise again over Anorlando, the bells would toll across the mountains, and the bonfires would continue to burn against the dark. The chosen undead was gone, body consumed, name erased, yet their will blazed brighter than all who came before. They had faced gods and demons, kings and dragons, abyss and chaos, and in the end they chose to burn so that the world could endure. They were no longer hollow, no longer cursed, no longer forgotten. They had become the very fire itself. This was not salvation, nor was it an end. It was sacrifice made eternal. The age of fire lived on, but so too did the curse. And one day the flame would fade again. When that time came, another would rise, as the chosen had risen, and the question would return: link the fire, or let it die. But in this moment, the fire blazed with all the fury of the beginning. The world was remade in light, the darkness was beaten back, and the legacy of the chosen undead became legend. Though their name was lost, their choice would echo across the ages. They were the flame that defied the dark. They were the spark that lit eternity. And so the story of Dark Souls ends not in silence, but in fire. Fire that rages, fire that endures, fire that binds all life to its endless cycle. The chosen undead gave everything, and in their final act, they became the dawn of a new age.